Hello, and welcome to the Garden of the Black Roses. This is Fanfiction, Dreams of the Undead, Arc 1, Chapter 7, The Tournament, Yami's Point of View. I don't know if this is such a good idea. I watched Atemu as he perched on the tree branch and watched Yugi sleep through the window. Seth made it quite clear that we are to give Yugi space until he returns to Domino. I don't care what Seth wants, he hissed at me. I know what I want. Heber is not going to stay away from me for so long without consequences. Besides, I don't understand this King of Games title he has. He doesn't have the royal blood. It's treasonous to claim a royal title if you have no lineage. Please don't do anything rash. Atemu shot a glare at me. We're going to push Yugi away more if you hurt him. We were both drawn to the rapid knocking on Yugi's bedroom door. What the hell? Yugi awoke with a jump and got up to open the door. What? Did I wake you? Seth asked, stepping into the room. What do you think? Yugi replied sarcastically. What is so damn important that you had to wake me up? Tia and Tristan told me that the two aren't in Domino anymore. There was silence between them before Yugi said, And there's no chance that they would go anywhere else but here? Seth nodded. Yugi began to pace the room. I won't be able to do the championship duel if they decide to kidnap me from here. If you're agreeable, Seth said softly, I'd like to set cameras up in here. Here and the bathroom are the only places you are alone in. Any other time, you are either with me or the other duelists. The window to the bathroom is too small for them to get in and get you out of, but the window here is big enough for them to easily take you in your sleep. So for my safety. Yugi stopped pacing and looked at Seth. But that leaves me with no privacy. It will only be me looking at the cameras unless I deem it necessary to show others. Yugi gave Seth a look that I had never seen before. It was almost a cross between love and friendship. I wonder what their relationship was. Atemu was growling like an irate cat next to me. I knew he saw the look as well. Nothing you can show me will be new to me, since Joey and I took full care of you after the incident. But I will only put cameras in here if you are agreeable to it. You never really explained to me what you two did. Yugi looked like he was troubled with his thoughts. To me, post the incident. Atemu and I looked at each other. Neither of us knew what the incident was that they were talking about. You were basically a life-size doll, Seth replied with a sigh. Joey and I had to do everything for you so you wouldn't respond to anything, even pain. We agonized for a long time before deciding that it was best for your health if we undressed you to bathe you rather than try and wash around your clothes. It pained me so much to see you like that. Joey was crying most nights because he couldn't bear another day seeing you unresponsive to us. I bit my lip. It had to have been something really bad to make Yugi like that. It was almost a full year before we even saw signs of you coming back to reality. What I do remember is you both starting to introduce me to jewel monsters. Yugi smiled and sat next to Seth. Teaching me to duel and strategies. It distracted me from my thoughts. Became my lifeline. I became the King of Games because of it. He rested his hand on Seth's knee. I'm grateful to both of you for pulling me out of my head and back to reality. Seth stroked Yugi's hand comfortingly, causing Atemu to start growling again beside me. Put the cameras up. Seth nodded and ruffled Yugi's hair before leaving him in the room alone to gather his thoughts. I watched Yugi flop back on his bed and rest his hand over his eyes. I've seen him do this before after a stressful day at school. Something about us being here stressing him? Atemu gripped the branch under him and sighed. We need to find out about this incident. I don't like thinking that something happened to our Heba that made him retreat into his head. Seth looked sad when he spoke of him being a life-size doll. I nodded. So tonight we watch from afar. Perhaps we will learn what him being king of games really means. I sat on one of the lights that watched over the stadium. Yugi was down below with a white thing strapped to his arm. I could hear the cheers of the crowd calling to him to kick the Life Stealer's ass. Atemu was watching Seth set up the cameras, so I decided to watch Yugi. I summoned the Dark Magician, Yugi yelled, causing the crowd to cheer loudly. And I activate this! A holographic card flipped up in front of him. Diffusion wave motion. Dark Magician, take down all of Rebecca's monsters. The scream in the stadium was deafening. Yugi may not have the lineage, but he had people who follow him. A true king cares for his people, and by pleasing them and assisting them, he wins card games to please them. He assists those learning how to battle with cards. Election by adoration. I sighed. Atemu wouldn't accept someone who was elected by adoration. Lineage meant everything to him. He held out his hand to a blonde-haired girl who promptly bypassed it to hug his arm. You beat me again, darling. I raised an eyebrow at this. Yugi clearly was not happy with her holding him so tightly. It seemed the crowd felt the same way as they called for the girl to let go of the King of Games. The cameras have been set up, Atemu said, sitting down and leaning back against me. Seth is leaving nothing to chance. He looked down at the stadium in time to see Yugi retrieve his arm from the girl and rub it to get feeling back. Learn anything here? Yugi is well loved by the people here, I replied with a sigh. He's been elected by those here as their king. Not in the true sense of the word, but more like a challenge to others to beat him. But still, it is an election by adoration. They love him when he battles against opponents with his cards, and they listen to him when he teaches them to do the same. Yugi-chan! A Chinese girl practically jumped and wrapped her arms around his small frame. You gonna duel me? If I do, Yugi said, causing the stadium to go quiet, you'll lose your place in the finals. I'm taking challenges today, but those in the tournament who challenge me and lose will be out. You really want to challenge me? Of course I do! She let him go and held her hand out for his cards to shuffle. He obliged and took hers to do the same. I hope you don't regret it. Yugi smirked, and I almost fell off the light. Yugi? Smirking? I have never seen him do that before. He took his cards back and handed the girl hers before walking to where he stood, where he battled the blonde girl. Let's duel. I glanced at Atemu. He was watching Yugi battle intensely against the girl, but even he almost fell off the light when we both heard Yugi call out one of his moves during the battle. I sacrificed Jack's Knight, King's Knight, and Queen's Knight to summon Slifer, the Sky Dragon. Atemu and I stared at the red dragon that seemed very comfortable being summoned by Yugi. Slifer, attack her dragon lady and obliterate her life points. Heba can call Osiris. Atemu looked faint. How? How is the red dragon of Osiris here? What sort of battle are these? Atemu. I placed a hand on his shoulder. There was no easy way to break this to him. Yugi summoned Mahad and Mana in the previous battle also. Atemu stared at me incredulously. We both knew Mahad and Mana had become their car monsters when they died. I saw both the Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl in the previous battle. Not possible! Atemu was in denial. Our donator seemed to have more power than us in this moment. Atemu was a royal by lineage and I was one by marriage, yet this commoner, who was elected by adoration, could summon our friends and a god of Egypt. How was this possible? Only Atemu should be able to summon the 3 gods of Egypt. We turned back to the battle in time to see Yugi win once again. The girl almost strangled him to death before he could detach himself from her with a look of disgust on his face. I snuck a glance at Atemu. His eyes were darkening. He was going to do something rash and someone was going to get hurt very soon. I hope he wasn't going to do what I thought he might do. After observing Yugi for a few days, we began to notice he had a routine. In the morning, he would have an early breakfast. Then, he would be teaching his people to battle with cards. He'd be there for 6 hours before heading to lunch. After lunch, he would spend 2 hours in the stadium taking challengers who wished to attempt to bypass the tournament. Of course, he would win every time and knock people out of the finals. Then, he would spend time on his own until dinner. He would meet up with his friends during dinner and spend some time with them before going to bed for the night. The best time to capture him is when he's on his own, Atemu whispered, watching from his branch as Yugi won another duel and knocked another hopeful competitor out of the finals. So later today, we will strike. What if Seth is there again? I asked. At times, Seth would join Yugi during his free time. I think to ward us off from attacking Yugi. Unless you plan on using shadows. Atemu nodded and he summoned a shadow that looked like Seth's modern version appear beside him. We'll use our dear Seth here to take Heba for a walk onto the grounds and lead him away from the tournament. His voice was growing very dark. We will have Heba right where we want him. I had misgivings about this plan as I watched Yugi go for a walk with Seth around the forested area of the tournament grounds. Atemu had waited until his shadow Seth took Yugi deeper into the forest before making him vanish completely. I had misgivings when Atemu swooped down and pinned Yugi to the ground and kissed the screaming boy senseless. Yugi hadn't have expected us to use his trust and friendship in others to attempt to harm him. But I was completely against Atemu when he had stripped Yugi and began to attempt to rape him. Atemu, we can't! I may touch Yugi's bare skin, kiss him forcefully, but I would never go this far. I was, when I was a human, and I remember how dirty and broken I felt afterwards for a long time. Do not tell me what I can and can't do. Atemu backhanded me hard enough to send me backwards into a tree. Yugi was crying at this point. I couldn't do a thing to help him. If you aren't going to do this with me, then don't stop me. He was growling, and he had lost himself to his lust for our little donator. My head was fuzzing. I must have hit the tree harder than I thought. Yugi's eyes were on me. He was pleading. I have to help him get away from Atemu. I have to. I opened my eyes slowly. They watered the scene in front of me. Yugi laid on the ground, motionless. His arms rested over his head. His eyes were open, full of tears, and dulled. He looked so lifeless, so helpless. I could hear movement coming from behind me, and I leapt into the tree to watch from afar. Atemu was nowhere in sight. "Darling!" The blonde girl from earlier was approaching. "Yugi-chan!" The Chinese girl must be with her. Better they find Yugi. They can get Seth and render Yugi more assistance than I could. I was so useless. I couldn't help him in the moment that he needed me most. Twin screams brought my attention back to the scene below. I could hear Yugi faintly talking. He was forcing himself to respond to them. He was being shaken by the girls who were close to hysterics. Kaiba. Yugi tried to fix the Chinese girl with one of his commanding stares, but failed. I need you to get Kaiba. He'll know what to do. Please, Vivi-chan. This seemed to snap the Chinese girl into awareness. You never called me by my nickname before, she said with a watery smile before nodding. Don't worry, Vivi-chan will be back with Kaiba before you notice I'm gone. And she sped off towards the stadium. Yugi. The blonde sounded like she was calming as well. Her hands were covered in blood from shaking him. She had located his jacket and placed it over his lower half before easing his arms down so his hands could rest comfortably on his chest. Should I tell Grandpa? Professor Hawkins? The blonde nodded. I think so, Becca. He will be able to get my grandpa out here. Tears flowed from his eyes. I'm sorry, Becca. I didn't want you or Vivian to see me like this. It's all right, Yugi. The blonde, Becca, I think is what Yugi called her, but it's got to be a nickname, replied, gently stroking one of Yugi's golden bangs. It's not your fault. She looked up at what sounded like a bulldozer charging through the trees. Here comes Kaiba. Seth looked directly up at me in the tree. I raised my hand in apology and mouthed, I need to see you later, before he looked back down and wrapped Yugi in a blanket. I jumped from tree to tree, following him as he took Yugi back to the stadium and away from where I could follow safely. I made my way to the tree outside Yugi's bedroom and waited. I couldn't sense Atemu anywhere nearby. I hope he had fled after regretting his actions with both Yugi and myself. But I knew in my heart it was false hope. Atemu won't regret. He'll just brush away his wrongdoings without saying sorry. So what did you want to talk about? Seth sounded like he was tightly holding his anger. I already know Yugi's condition is because of the two of you. Nothing you can really say to me will change that. Then bite me. I wasn't trying to be sarcastic or rude. A way vampires can see memories is by biting another. Vampires always see the memories of other vampires. Otherwise, the ability is split when it comes to other species, like how I could sense Yugi's emotions, whereas Atemu could see his memories. Seth looked a little shocked at the offer. It was taboo to bite another vampire, as it was an invasion of their memories. I nodded, and felt Seth gently touch my cheek before he held me tight to bite my neck. A shiver ran up my spine. Atemu was near. He'll be able to sense someone had biting his partner, and will come here. Seth, I whispered softly. A muffled note from him told me he could sense Atemu as well, but since we started, he might as well finish. I could feel the memories of earlier flash through my mind. My refusal, Atemu's attack, me passing out, then coming to find Yugi in that state. I see. Seth licked my neck and let me go. It seems my cousin is growing wild with his loss of control on the world. He took it out on the 2 people in the whole world who could love him unconditionally. Seth motioned for me to sit on the bed next to him. I want you to bite me. I want to show you the memories Yugi gave me of the incident. I want you to see what made him a broken doll. He's on the verge of becoming a doll again. I nodded, took Seth into my arms, and sank my fangs into his neck. Unbeknownst to us, Atemu was watching intently outside. And that's it. Oh, that was a hard one to read. Now, I did skip some bits and pieces. Yeah, only because I was a little uncertain as to whether I can read them. So I ad-libbed a little bit. But there is a link. It goes to the fanfiction in the description. The fanfiction page for this particular story. And you can read what is actually written. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, as always, like and subscribe. If you want me to continue this story, I can, or I can try. I'd have to watch Yu-Gi-Oh again, actually, if I want to do that and start reading a lot more Yu-Gi-Oh fanfiction. But I can try. I've got a lot of notes on how I wanted this story to go. Just like with all my other unfinished pieces. I have a lot of notes as how I wanted them to go, but I haven't gotten to writing them. Yeah. But yeah. Just remember, let your imagination grow wild. Bye for now.